really don't think we should be measured. I mean, we are human people. We have every right to go to group homes. We have every right to go to nursing homes. We are not animals. We are human people as well. We've been judged for a long, long time. I've been judged for 42 years. We are not judged. We should not be judged at all. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that statement. I think what happens is state governments have to find some way to justify payments that they make. And I normally don't talk about this, but let me talk about something. That's that Mr. Plato mentioned that he came across me in the last encounter he had in the courts because I had some expertise dealing with funding systems in other states. I've actually worked with consultants who set rates in other states. And I know that the best way to start doing that, and the way that Wisconsin started doing it, was by looking at the costs of providing services. If you start with looking at what the provider's costs are to provide the services to very vulnerable individuals, then you're not going to go wrong. And in fact, the best rate setting does that. What's happened over time, and I think, in terms, I've talked to Representative Dakota about this, and I don't know that I've talked to Senator Grothman about it, but when she asked for our help in trying to resolve things, the representative said that she'd like our help. The two recommendations I made there were based on the fact that we know that the long-term care functional screen is not a particularly valid measure of the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And yet, now, all of the MCOs are being paid on the basis of those functional screens. And now, more and more providers are being paid on the basis of those functional screens. So if you don't start with a valid assessment that looks at all the support needs of an individual in their home, in their community, in employment, and dealing with medical and behavioral issues, then you're not going to get a needs-based rate. You can't, because you're not using the information properly. You have to, in fact, look at what is happening with that person in order to decide who should get more resources and who should get fewer resources. And that's what they use assessments for. If they're done well, it's a good thing, and it can actually help in decision making around how services are funded.
Something to tell you about provider costs. As part of the Milwaukee County lawsuit, I started thinking about how do we prove this thing he just said, that the rates are not enough to meet actual provider costs. And so we asked for and got the audited financials of every single residential provider that served the Milwaukee Managed Care Organization. And we hired a CPA to go through them and do a financial analysis, and then we had a national consultant give us an equation, and he looked at all the data. And a third of the providers were going out of business. They just didn't know it. They could not possibly continue to pay for insurance and everything else. And I worked with some of those providers in other ways. They come to me because they've got a business issue or whatever. And during the height of that lawsuit, I knew providers who, because of the rate issue, were taking charge card advances to pay staff salaries. And that, if that's what's happening in the system, we've got a huge problem. And so we figured that the rate increase that Milwaukee County MCO got from the state was probably enough to get everybody at least back up to where they weren't, wallowing in red ink. But still, it's not a really, it's not a high-paying profession to work in, and profits have just been going down and down. And we want it to go in the other direction. The best care is provided by people who aren't just getting minimum wage. So I just thought I'd pass along that accounting data that that's really objective data about what happens to providers in the system if you don't look at the costs.